Hello witches, and welcome back to A Coven of Two, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and in today's video we're gonna talk about magical timing, how to perfectly time your spells. We're gonna go a bit into how I got into being very much interested in magical timing, and we're gonna go down in levels. So first planetary days, then planetary hours, then we're gonna look into dignities and abilities. Yeah, we're gonna get there, stay tuned. And we're gonna conclude into apps. So what kind of apps can be useful to help us know when is the right time, when is the best time for something. But before we get started, let me mention that I've opened a Ko-fi, which is basically an alternative to Patreon that takes less from creators. And on there you can do a one-off donation or a monthly subscription donation to support the work that I do here. And you can also get tarot readings, donate what you can from £5 onwards, and you can get a tarot reading with me, Italian style. So if you would like to support what I do here, you can head on to Ko-fi, and if you do so, thank you so much. So as you can gather, this video is going to be about timing related to planets, basically under the archetypes of the 7 classical planets, so the Moon, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn. They basically covered pretty much any kind of subject a spell would fall into. So personally, I've first come across them because in a book it was mentioned, oh, you know, if you want to do a prosperity spell, it's ideal if you do it on Thursday. Why? Because it's the day of Jupiter. Jupiter is the great benefic, is the planet of expansion and growth and prosperity, so that's why money spells would be done on Thursdays. And then I ended up on talking about, and it's better if you do it when it's the sunset of a Thursday, because that's gonna be the hour of Jupiter as well. Wait a second, like the days are split now into hours and every hour is dedicated to a planet. I know about the days of the week, but what's this story about hours now? And then it got more complicated. So we're gonna go into the levels of complication. First one, if you want to do a spell on any kind of subject, ideally you split it between one of the 7 days because they're dedicated to one of the 7 planets. So for Monday, day of the moon, that is ideal for everything that has to do with intuition, psychic powers, but also any kind of health issue that is related to uterus, ovaries, breasts. You would do it on the day of the moon. Any kind of spell that also is related to fluids in general, water, I don't know, there was a weird mention of spells done about the milkman, technically because it's related to milk, which is a fluid, moon. I imagine because the moon admittedly affects the tides, so the biggest amount of fluid and water that we have here, so she rules that, and that's fair enough. Going along with the feminine nature, realistically cold nature, there's actually a very good point that Matt Oren brings in Psychic Witch on the part about planetary cosmology and spells, that actually the gendering of planets was really a matter of hot and cold, and then hot became masculine and cold feminine. But in that sense, the moon would have a cold energy and would be related to all things that are also related to the house. Spells about safety in childbirth, that's something that you would do on a Monday as well. Also the land, real estate, any object that is used in cooking or within the house, that would be ruled by the moon as well. And because technically the moon is the ruler of Cancer, which is the natural 4th house of the zodiac, that is the reason why I'd like to prefer to think it is related to the house and anything that happens in the home, and therefore also ancestral work. So personally, in my opinion, ancestral work is good to be done either on a Monday because of that, or possibly on a Saturday, and we'll see why in a second. Tuesday is the day dedicated to Mars. Mars was the Roman god of war, the lover of Venus, and in a way, a other side of the coin. So whereas Venus, it's all about emotions and feelings and love, Mars is more about action and raw need and desire. And personally, I found that the days and hours dedicated to Mars are very useful for something that you want to see quick action happening. Along with action and assertion and ambition, Mars also rules matters of competition. So, I don't know, you need to actually get a job and there's a lot of competition. I would do a spell about that on a day of Mars, or on the hours of Mars at least. It also relates to all those kind of workings and of jobs that have to do with using your hands. So if you're a woodworker, if you're a fireman, if you're an engineer, those kind of things, those kind of doings are ruled by Mars as well. Considering that Mars rules Aries, which is the natural first house, it has to do with all those things that have action to initiate things, to be assertive, to be impulsive in a way. In ancient time, when we also just had 7 planets, so just the planets that are actually visible to the naked eye, Mars also ruled Scorpio, which is now ruled by Pluto. And that is the reason why Pluto is said to be the higher octave of the energy of Mars, by the way. From the ruling of Scorpio, which is the natural 8th house of the zodiac, is the connection of Mars to passion, with raw sexuality, and to a degree even to death. And that's probably why Scorpio is now ruled by Pluto. So basically all the matters of the 1st and the 8th house fall under the jurisdiction of Mars. So those are the kind of workings that you would do on a Tuesday. When it comes to Wednesdays, it's all about matters of Mercury. So any kind of communication, any way that you can imagine communication decline, whether it's written down, whether it's sending an email, whether it's actually doing public speaking, even to the degree where you work in sales, so you have a shop, that is under Mercury. Any kind of traveling of information or people is under Mercury. So the moment that you need to do, let's say, a travel protection spell, you would do it the Wednesday before you actually travel. Mercury also is the ruler of Gemini and Virgo, which are the natural 3rd and 6th house, which means that every matter that falls under this house falls under the rulership of Mercury. So all the matters of family and neighbors and neighborhood for the 3rd house, and every matter of small pets, co-workers, and especially in matters of health and hygiene, according to the 6th house, that is stuff that you would go and choose a Mercury day for, so a Wednesday. I thought I was prepared, but I needed more preparing. I don't know these things off the top of my head. When it comes to a Thursday, we finally come to the day of Jupiter. So again, if you want to do anything that has to do with expansion and growth and abundance and prosperity, Jupiter is your guy. In the sense that it's considered a great benefic, any kind of business you should undertake under Jupiter, under the hour of Jupiter and the day of Jupiter, and actually, it rules over all those matters of legality as well. So any kind of spell for anything that is legal or involving contracts, it would be either under Jupiter or under Mercury, because as we saw, anything that is written down, anything that is communication. As the ruler of Sagittarius under 4 of the natural 9th house, it presides over education, especially higher education, philosophy. And as the classical ruler of Pisces under 4 of the 12th house, it also is involved in religion and spirituality. Anything that you need energy for, enthusiasm for, Jupiter is going to be your planet and your day. And then we come to Friday, the day of Venus. And other than just being the day in which any kind of love, self-love, it's ruled by this day, there are also other things. Venus ruled the signs of Taurus and Libra, and therefore the natural 2nd and 7th house. And for the 2nd house, it's in its quality of Earth, because Taurus is a sign of Earth, and so anything that has to do with comfort and sensuality, and therefore it's possibly why if you need to start a new venture and some financial kind of spells are also favorable to be done during the days and the hours of Venus. For what concerns instead the ruling of the aspects of the 7th house, everything that has to do with relationship has to do with Venus and therefore with Friday, which also means diplomacy, and if you need to make a spell to bring peace, anything to bring peace or mediation of affairs, Venus and therefore Friday are the days for you. Then we come to Saturday, Saturn Day, and therefore every kind of working that you're thinking about, banishment, protection, but also those works that has to do with death. So for example, ancestors' work is greatly done on Saturdays. Is the day that I do ancestor work, especially with my grandparents. Saturn classically ruled Capricorn and Aquarius, so earth and air, and therefore naturally ruled the aspects of the 10th and 11th house of the zodiac. So for the 10th house, of course, anything that has to do with status and reputation in your community or in the world falls under Saturn. And for the 11th house, it has to do still with your position within a larger community and possibly to granting the welfare of that community. The strictness of Saturn and its relation to restriction and death makes it also ideal for any kind of spell work that has to do with institutions, with order, with the government, with any kind of authority figure. Yes, Saturday is your day. And personally, I also related to my grandparents because Saturn, through Capricorn, is very much related to the element of earth. It was also considered the planet of agriculture, and my grandparents were farmers, and therefore there's the connection. Any kind of banishment, any kind of protection, you do on a Saturday. Then we come to Sunday. Sunday is the day of the Sun. The Sun rules Leo, and therefore the 5th house of the natural zodiac. And it makes complete sense because the 5th house is about the person, individuality, but also creativity and success. Sun is about ego, it's about you. Any kind of spell about self-confidence, but also any kind of spell about your success. So technically, I personally do prosperity spells both on Thursdays and on Sundays, and possibly actually I mingle the power of the Sun and Jupiter, doing the day of one and the hour of the other. Speaking of which, if you have time to go more in depth than just what day of the week I should pick for my workings, that's when we get into planetary hours. Most books on planetary hours are literally just bringing you tables because that's how you used to be able to calculate them. It's no longer like that. There are apps, and I'll mention them at the end of this video, but you also find them linked down in the description below. Basically, it works like this. From Chaldean times, we're talking 2000 and over BCE, we used to split the day in 12 hours. However, the hours weren't 60 minutes. The hours were calculated like this. You don't have to do it with pen and paper, but just so you know. Take the moment that the sun rises. Take the moment that the sun sets. Count the minutes and divide those by 12 equally. However many minutes fit, that is the length of a day hour. And then you go from the moment that the sun set to the moment that the sun will rise the next day. Those are the night hours at that point. You split them the same way. Ça va sans dire, needless to say, every single day of the year has different hours. They are split differently, and of course you needed entire books with tables to tell you what, when, and also sunset and sunrise happen at different times in different places. Thank goodness for apps. The hours go like this. The first hour, because depends, it's not an hour long, but it's the first planetary hour, is dedicated to the planet whose day it is. So, for example, the first hour of a Sunday after the sun rises is going to be the hour of the sun. You will notice the planetary hours go in an order that is different from the order that we use for the week. So the week has Monday, Monday, and then Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, and Sun. Why? Reasonable question. Well, we use the Chaldean order for planetary hours, because the Chaldeans were out and about since Mesopotamia. They surely knew what they were doing. The Chaldean order actually makes sense once you get into the mind of it. Basically, it's the order from the furthest away to the closest planet according to how quickly it moved. So the order was Saturn, further away, then Jupiter, then Mars, then there's not the Earth, but there's the Sun, because it takes a year to go around. So the Sun, and then you have Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, because it takes the shortest amount of time, 28 to 29 days to go around. And that is the Chaldean order, and that is the order in which the planetary hours go. It is admittedly a fantastic order that clearly works, because even when we changed from Julian to Gregorian calendar, they were still impeccably going smoothly. So kudos to that. That also likely speaks to my coder mentality that I mentioned in the 12 days of Yule's. There are two kind of workings that you can do in witchcraft. One is all based on intuition, you do meditation, you talk to spirits, you feel energy, which is something that I'm trying to work on. The other, though, it's method and calculation. And that's the reason why I'm getting interested in ceremonial magic, and that's the reason why planetary hours immediately started to sound interesting to me, because it's something that basically you calculate, and then you calculate dignities and abilities, which we'll get to in a second, with charts, which is all geometry and maths, and that I can do. So every day you have 2 to 3 hours dedicated to every planet. So that is the way that technically that you then pick a day and also pick an hour. And you can pick the hour of Jupiter in the day of Jupiter if you really want to go and crush that prosperity. But also, if it's prosperity that you want to come to you through the success of something that you do and you become, I don't know, a famous person or a writer or someone that ends up on TV, something that has to do with the ego, you might do it on a Sunday in the hour of Jupiter, or vice versa. Again, worry not if it sounds complicated. There are apps nowadays, even just astrology apps, that will tell you based on the databases available of sunset and sunrise given a geolocation when an hour is going to be and what planet is going to be. And if you want to be really good on top of the planetary day, you can choose the planetary hour. Technically, there's also the phases of the moon, so you can associate that with the day that you pick, meaning that you want to do something in expansion or in attraction to you. So you want to attract love, you want to attract success, you want to attract prosperity. Ideally, those are workings that you do between the new moon. You set an intention for something new to grow until it gets to the full moon. Those are the 2 weeks, basically, into which you would do workings where you want to attract things to you, you want those things to come to you. Vice versa, when you want things to be removed, whether it's a legal problem, whether it's a banishment of a negative energy, whether it's a matter of protection from any of those kind of things, you do those workings between the full moon and the new moon when the moon is waning. And ideally, something that I found is that especially for protection and banishment, the closer it is to a balsamic moon, so when the moon is almost waning, almost dark moon, but not quite new moon, the better. If you are extremely lucky, it's going to be a new moon on a Sunday. Therefore, on the Saturday, the day just before, you are in extremely balsamic moon. You have just a little tingy bit of moon still available, and with last tingy bit, everything that you're going to do that spell about is going to be removed and you're going to be protected from it. That is my experience anyway. Now, you've got your day set, you know how to find the planetary hour, you even have checked what phase of the moon it is. Do we really need to go more in depth? Need? No. Want? Possibly? We can. And that's where dignities and abilities come from, and that's where my mind has been burned over the last year or so. I came across this because there's a specific horoscope from a website in Italy that used to bring values, points, to every planet, classical planet, every day. And I liked that at the beginning because I was like, oh, not only I know that on a Thursday I can do this spell, but I also know the potency of Jupiter. That's amazing. How is it calculated? Because I don't have a background in astrology, well, I didn't at the time. I am slightly better now, but still I don't come from the whole knowledge of astrology and classic astrology. Dignities and abilities meant nothing to me, so I had to reverse engineer things, which wasn't easy or pretty at the time because I didn't even know what to look for. What I was looking for, and then I realized, was actually a system that comes from Hellenic astrology. and the most complete text on the matter is William Lilly, Christian Astrology, which was written in the 17th century. Basically, through the works of the Dorotheans, of Ptolemy, of Lilly himself, of the astrology that Egyptian people used to make, all of these things are put together and basically value the position of a planet in the ecliptic and give values to it. So, there are two kinds of dignities and abilities, the essential and the accidental. We're going to focus on the essentials because the accidentals technically change every single day and you can only calculate them by hand, which at some point I've tried, and unless we're talking about the seer of an emperor that is going to be paid his weight in gold to calculate that, even I don't think that's worth it. Because accidental dignities have also to do with houses, so the precise time of day that a certain planet is in a certain position, not only in the ecliptic, but also in the sky that we see. It's a bit too much even for me. Maybe it isn't for anyone else that is into astrology, but it is for me. That gets me confused still. Maybe in time I will get there. At times I cast the values of a planet just to make an exercise out of it, but it's not how I try to find my own magical timing. However, dignities and abilities, when essential, could mean something. They are relevant because especially Cornelius Agrippa talked about the power of the planets and what moment was more auspicious to basically gather the power of that planet into a talisman. So this is a derivation of that. We're not necessarily making talismans, we're just trying to use the energy of that planet for whatever kind of magical working we're doing. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be as precise and accurate, also because otherwise it becomes a bit of a time wasting, and why should I get into that much detail? Honestly, most of the time, for the main 5 planets, you're gonna be alright. At some point during the year, you're gonna have a good time for it, or with it. Because between the Moon, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and even Mars to a degree, and most, they take, I think Mars takes 2 years-ish to do an entire orbit around the Sun. So at some point, they're going to be in their own sign or their own exaltation. They're gonna have a good score because of that. It's fine. In my experience, it became a tiny bit more complicated when it comes to Jupiter and Saturn, because Jupiter takes 12 years to orbit around the Sun, so to go through every single sign of the zodiac, while Saturn goes between 27 and 31 years. Because Saturn rules, as we mentioned, Capricorn and Aquarius, one after the other, it means that for 6 years, more or less, you're gonna have a good time working with it and anything that has to do with banishment, protection, and establishment of your position in the community. Awesome. And when those 6 years are finished, you are kind of left out to hang dry for the next 22 to 24 years. Is that the case? Not quite, but it comes down to a lot of calculations, because that's when we go into mutual receptions. I genuinely feel the mutual receptions is the way that William Lilly decided, you know what, it's getting complicated here, let's get a get out of jail free pass to people. So, dignities and abilities are based in how comfortable is a planet in a certain sign, and then how comfortable is a planet in the element of that sign, and we have triplicities. How comfortable is that planet in those 10 degrees interval in that sign? And then, how comfortable really is that planet in that specific degree in that sign that it is in? And those are terms. And then, thankfully, the abilities are just the opposite of the sign that that planet rules and the exaltation. So, for example, I still need to check it. Freak! We're gonna use the Sun and the Moon because they only rule one sign, and so it's gonna make it slightly easier for me to give you an example. Don't worry, you have the tables of all the terms, all the decans, all the triplicities, all the dignities of rulership and exaltation and abilities and fall down in the description below. Okay, I can do this. Table. The sun rules Leo. We all know it, we all agree it. Yes? Yes. When the sun is in Leo, so for the month of July over August, the sun is a +5 because that's his absolute dignities of rulership. Technically though, when the sun is in Aries, so March, April-ish, that is also its exaltation because Aries is also a sign of fire. And when the sun is in Aries, still gets a +4, not too shabby. Also, the sun, by nature, rules the triplicity of fire. There's a triplicity for every element. The sun rules the fire one. It rules the days of the fire one, which means that every time that the sun is going to be in a sign of fire during the day hours, so sunrise to sunset, it's going to get a +3. Which also means that when the sun is in its own sign of Leo, +5, is also during the day in his own rule triplicity +3, it gets a +8. You do tend to work well with planets that are +5 and over. At least that's what William Lilly said. The sun also particularly enjoys the second decan of both Scorpio and Aries. What does that mean? The degrees in which the signs are split are 30. 30 times 12, 360. Degrees 10 to 20 is the second decan of a sign. When the sun is in Aries, which is his exaltation, so +4, and it's the day, because it rules the triplicity of fire, so also +3, but it's also in the second decan of Aries, so degrees 10 to 20, it gets a +4, +3, 7, +2, 9. You can see how these calculations can go. Now, it's all fun and games until we're talking about, again, planets that sooner or later, within the year or so, are gonna touch upon every sign. It's fine. Jupiter and Saturn are the reason why I got so much into planetary timing and magic, because they take so long to orbit around the entirety of the zodiac. And so what happens when Jupiter cannot be neither in Sagittarius nor in Pisces? What happens when Saturn has gone out, like it just happened actually, of Aquarius, and so until it finally gets into Capricorn again, we're not gonna see a +5. That's kind of an issue. Well, that's where mutual receptions come in. Now, mutual receptions state this. We have to understand that people that were doing this kind of thing and calculations were doing that for their main job. They had a patron, they had an emperor or someone that was literally keeping them alive because of that. So I can understand why they spent a lot of time making minutious attention to these things. Mutual receptions are basically the idea that Saturn is not a good example right now. Let's use Jupiter, because Jupiter is currently giving us one of those examples. Jupiter is not in Sagittarius nor in Pisces, but for the month of January 2024, it's gonna get to peaks of +7/8. Why? How is that possible? Mutual receptions. How do those work? I'm glad you asked. Venus rules, as we have seen before, Taurus and Libra. It means that when Venus is in Taurus or Libra, would get a +5. Venus is neither in Taurus nor in Libra, it's in Sagittarius currently. Jupiter, instead, rules Sagittarius and Pisces, is in neither of those. It's currently in Taurus. Is it in Taurus? Or is it in Libra? I think it's in Taurus. A chart for my life. Jupiter is currently in Taurus, which would be ruled by Venus, which is actually in Sagittarius, which would be ruled by Jupiter. They exchange house, wives, they exchange powers. So Venus is like, bro, you technically are in my space and I am in your space. if you tell your people to treat me as nicely as they would if you were here, I'll do the same with you. And so it counts as if we have swapped, and therefore we get both +5 because it's like we are in our own rulership. Now, I don't know why, but some apps and some people think that mutual receptions just count for rulership and exaltation. And I haven't seen Lily say as much. So technically, it counts for everything. It counts for triplicities, it counts for decans, the 10 degrees, it counts for the terms, which are so fucked up, but they're there. And technically it's good because until a planet has some kind of dignity, it doesn't matter if it's just a +1 for a term, it's not peregrine. Why is it bad to be peregrine? I'm just thinking of Eva Green. Why is it bad to be peregrine? It shouldn't. But it's bad because if a planet is peregrine, it gets a -5, which, if we go back to can you always work with a planet? Well, if you don't look into dignities and abilities, yes. If you start to look into that, you might get a bit apprehensive to work with a planet that is currently peregrine at the -5. Because, at least in the making of talismans and therefore to gather the power of that planet, some people have reported weird happenings when you work with a planet that is undignified. And things like, the backfiring or getting the opposite of what you ask could be the case, which is the reason why I have got so obsessed about this. I beseech you not to get obsessed with this if you've always been comfortable otherwise, because ultimately what matters is how things work for you. If you have a practice and you have taken notes and it works for you to work with Jupiter on Thursdays at most, and you don't have to look at the moon and you don't have to look at dignities, that's amazing, keep doing that. This is in case anybody is as much as a nerd as I am when it comes to adding maths to geometry to witchcraft. That, in short, is the way that you can consider magical timing from the macro to the micro level. As I mentioned, there are a couple of apps that can be useful. There are apps for planetary hours. My favorite currently, and it's been for the last year, and I can't imagine something replacing it, and if I could afford it, I would have the full version, anti-ad version. It's simply called Daily Life with Moon Calendar. It has so much. It has planetary hours, it has what sign is the moon in, when is gonna be the next full moon, when is gonna be the next dark moon, what phase of the moon it is, sunset and sunrise and moonset and moonrise according to your specific location, not city, location, geolocation, like with all the number thingies. Moon phases, moon in signs, did I forget anything? The moon void, of course, because technically when it's in void, of course, you wait for the moon to go into the next sign. A moon void, of course, it's when it has done all the aspects with the planets that it could do, and so until it meets the next planet in the next sign, it's void, of course. And then indeed it has the planetary hours split between day and night hours. There is one and one only free app that allows you to see some of the dignities and abilities scores that the planets have. It simply calls Hours, and it's by a website called Lunarium. For my last birthday, I spent to get myself Astro Gold, which is a kind of a professional app. I have it just on iOS because on iOS, and I think on computer as well, has the option of having not only dignities and abilities, but it makes you choose the different terms, if they are Egyptian, if they are Dorothean, there's a lot of stuff. That is the app that allowed me not only to reverse engineer completely the values that I would see around, but also considers all the mutual receptions, which is the reason why when I work in advance of months, basically, I go day by day by day by day by day of every chart, but it also gives me a table which tells me what are the dignities that day, and it tells me why. If it's in its own sign or term, or if it's a mutual reception for term, decan, whatever, with what planet. And that is basically how I managed to work months in advance of when is it going to be the next good time for a spell that requires either Jupiter or Saturn. Because as I said before, pretty much all the other planets are moving around enough that within a year you're going to be able to work with them. If you have seen on the community tab on YouTube and on Ko-fi, there's a free post with basically the essential dignities that you're gonna get for January. And January, because there's this mutual reception between Jupiter and Venus, Jupiter is gonna get peaks of +7, +8, so ideal timing for any kind of prosperity magic. And it's also happening during the phase of the moon that is crescent. Currently, Jupiter is already in Taurus and Venus is already in Sagittarius, but until the 11th of January, which is when the new moon is, we're not going to be in crescent moon, in waxing crescent moon. So that's going to be the time ideal. And if you go on the community tab, or I'm going to link it here on the blog post on Ko-fi, which again, it's free, you can see basically what the days are going to be and what's going to be ideal. And it's going to be for Jupiter, Venus and Mars specifically because they are going to be +5 and over during the month of January. I am not necessarily doing dignities for the moon because the moon takes a month to go around, and basically every month when the moon is in Cancer, the moon is highly dignified. If you think that that would be useful, I am more than happy in the months to come to make a sheet, a document like I've made for the dignities of January that includes the days that it's ideal to work with the moon as well. Let me know if that's something that would be of interest to you. Mercury is not in a good place currently, so I haven't added it. Same with the Sun, because it's not in a dignity or exaltation, so until it gets to Aries, easy. But yeah, this is basically all the reasoning and foundation that there was behind me posting this file with these are the ideal magical timing elections for January. This is what I do in my free time because nerd. But let me know if you think that this video was useful, if you have any questions. Basically, this is a variation or part of what is considered horary astrology and the opposite, which is electional astrology, so finding the perfect timing for things. Let me know if it's useful, if you think that I'm insane, which I'm sure kinda am. I don't blame you. And again, I cannot stress this enough. If you are happy to work just with the day, or with the hour, or with the phases of the moon, good for you. Do not get stuck into this stuff like I have. But for anyone else that has got stuck in it and couldn't find a clear way to get these things explained unless they were getting into 1600s books, I basically wish that this video was around when last year I got into these. So I've made it for anyone else that might get as obsessed as I am and wants to understand about planets, days, planetary hours, but what's the value of Jupiter in this planetary hour? Now, hopefully, you have the foundations to know. I hope this was useful. Don't forget to check the community tab because as the new video is out, there's gonna be a new poll where you can choose what the next video on Monday is going to be. What is it gonna be? I don't know. You're gonna tell me. Usually by Thursday morning, then I pick whatever has the highest vote count. And I'm gonna film the video that's gonna be out next Monday. So don't forget to check out the community tab. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments. I love interaction. And until the next time, I hope that we can axe the patriarchy together, because there's need for it.